Commission meeting. It is October 28th. It is 7:30, and I am opening this meeting with the first order of business being the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I always do, and especially tonight, I welcome everyone who has taken the time this evening to come and join us here in Town Hall. And I also welcome all those who are following tonight's commission meeting via virtual streaming, courtesy of the Carroll County Media Center. So thanks to them for that ability. The next item I have on the agenda tonight is the approval of our minutes from the September meeting on September 30th. Before I ask for a motion from the commissioners on approval or disapproval, I'll pause while commissioners can look through any notes they made on those minutes.
Yeah. I would propose to accept the minutes as submitted.
Okay, Commissioner Butts makes the motion to approve the minutes of September 30th. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, but there is a typo in the minutes. I don't know if you want to address that.
Okay, so what we can do is we can second his motion and then go into discussion to offer edits, and then Commissioner Butts can then amend his motion.
I'll go ahead and second the motion.
The motion on the floor has been seconded by Commissioner Beineck. It's now open for discussion. I turn to Commissioner Wallace for an edit.
Just minor update on page 2, section 5. Just update that to Twin Arch Business Park.
The spelling A-R-H? A-R-C-H.
Okay, right.
Gotcha. Deborah, you have that, right? Gotcha. While we're on the discussion, are there any other edits offered by the commissioners? Seeing none, then I turn to the originator of the motion for an amendment of his motion.
I would move that we make that correction to this section 5, and that arch is properly spelled out.
The amended motion is to approve the minutes with the correction mentioned in paragraph 5 to correct the spelling of arch. Do we have a second on the amended motion?
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Beineck seconds the amended motion. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None opposed. The minutes are passed unanimously for September 30th, last commission meeting. The next item on the agenda is where we offer citizen comments for anyone here who wishes to make a comment on items not on the agenda. Items on the agenda, well, I will afford time for public comments specific to that agenda item. So again, this is the time for anyone in the public to come to the microphone to your left and offer a comment on something not related. Before we proceed, if I could see a show of hands of all those interested in making such comment. Once again, a show of hands. Seeing no interest in public comments at this part of tonight's agenda, I close the public comments portion and now move to the portion of the agenda for our Carroll and Frederick County planners. And we will begin with Ms. Hannah Weber representing Carroll County. Hannah, welcome tonight.
Good evening, everybody. It was good seeing you, some of you at the conference last week. Just some updates from Carroll County. Probably the biggest one is we have received our housing study from the consultants that will be presented to our County Planning Commission next Wednesday, November 6th. The consultants will be giving the presentation to them. And then the plan is to take any revisions after that presentation, refine the study a little bit, and then I believe present it to the Board of County Commissioners sometime later in December, I think. But it should be available on the website, and I believe John has already gotten the chance to review it for Mount Airy. We have two zoning text amendments that are going to public hearing on November 14th. This is for solar site design guidelines and for housing, the House Bill 538 to bring our zoning code into compliance with state law. That public hearing is with the county commissioners on November 14th. We have also launched our master plan website. It is carroll2035.org. On there, you can see there's 2 surveys available to take. There's kind of some driving ideas that we came up with along with our planning commission and the board of county commissioners, kind of as the fundamental principles going into the master plan. They include stuff like housing, working with the municipalities and the county commissioners and the state, infrastructure, yeah, 3 of the 5 I can remember. And then from here until kind of the end of the master plan, we are going to be having discussions with our county planning commission at every meeting just on different subjects that they'd like to hear about leading up to the master plan. We had an interesting discussion with them in October about the BLI, the building land inventory, kind of what we have available on county-owned land, county land, for development, for no development, and so on and so forth. And we also talked about water and sewer infrastructure, which was pretty interesting. That was on October 15th, if you're interested. But that's about it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Hannah. And do the commissioners have any questions for the Carroll County representative? A quick question with regard to the master plan. Is it too much of an expectation that the transportation element in that forthcoming master plan will address specifically Route 27 and its volume and traffic challenges?
It was addressed in the transportation master plan that we had in 2023, and that will be incorporated into our master plan. So.
Sounds great. No other questions? Thanks so much, Hannah.
Yep, thanks.
Our Frederick County liaison is Ms. Vanessa Moreno. Vanessa, welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So to begin, first being the Investing in Workers and Workplaces plan. Our team is currently working on 5 plans, one being this plan in particular, that looks to identify targeted economic opportunities throughout the country through a review of selected growth areas and current land use designations. We partnered with the county's Economic Development Office to host 3 public outreach meetings to gather public input and provide an opportunity for the public to learn more about the initiative. Our staff intended on cycling participants through different workstations and activities, but unfortunately we were unable to. The conversation was mainly dominated by transmission lines and the data centers, and we had over 80 participants for each of those meetings, so yeah. Oh, next steps will be to create reports on what the county is hearing from citizens to hopefully turn the page and continue working on the county's workforce plan and to eventually help guide more incremental development and infrastructure needs. Next, we have the residential development pipeline. We completed its 3rd quarter to reflect the county's and municipalities' residential development. We saw no major changes to any of the municipalities' reports, including the city of Fredericks. In regards to Commissioner Butts' question last month regarding the growth in the surrounding communities and southeast quadrant of Frederick, we have projects in the pipeline as of now, but they're currently moving rather slowly through our development review department and in terms of recorded lots and build-outs. So the currently considers these areas low priority for the county overall. At the October 16th Planning Commission meeting, staff presented on the Myersville and Middletown plan amendments in front of the planning commissioners for their approval. The Myersville Planning Commission removed a handful of properties from their growth area due to the land's topography, and it can't serve water and sewer at the moment. So county staff adjusted those properties from our county's growth area to ensure the plans lined up and to reflect the decisions made by Myersville during their planning processes. Similarly, this was done to Middletown as well, also just removing some properties from our growth areas as well. And both plans were approved by the Planning Commission and will advance to the County Council. We saw some legislation come up as well. Bill 2417 was to amend the zoning ordinance to update 5 existing definitions and add new definitions. Some of those definitions include the term variance, basement, start of construction, and so forth. Staff also identified 36 terms that are missing from the zoning's definition section. Unfortunately, the motion was not passed, and staff will revisit the definitions. And yeah, those are my updates. Sure.
Excellent, Vanessa. Do the commissioners have any question for Frederick County Planning? A quick question. When you talked about Myersville basically shrinking the designated growth areas, is it too far to say that's a signal from Myersville planners that they see growth becoming too fast, too large, or is that a bad conclusion?
I would just say that residents and the town weren't necessarily interested in annexing additional lands for the future. So I guess their idea was to remove it from their growth area. Also, the properties mentioned, they can't have water and sewer due to the land's topography. So that definitely adds some conflict in there as well. So, yeah.
Great. No other questions? Thank you very much, Vanessa.
Of course.
Our next item on the agenda is an introduction and discussion for a signage request for a business known as Cigars and More, located at 1001 Twin Arch Boulevard, Twin Arch Shopping Center. Do we have a representative from? You're welcome to come forward, have a seat, and while you get settled, we'll first start with a staff report, and then I'll move to you for elaborating on anything he may not have covered well.
Sorry, okay.
So, John, if you can give us a quick thumbnail sketch of this application.
Sure. So this is actually JBK Cigars currently that's in the Twin Arch Shopping Center. It has been purchased by a new owner who's requesting a replacement sign. The proposed sign is Cigars and More. Initially, the applicant did come in for a request, and it was going to be cigars.vape. Again, our code doesn't allow for that, hence the revised staff report. And staff is recommending Planning Commission grant approval of the new sign for the Cigars and More store located in the Twin Arch Shopping Center. It is in compliance with 112-11.
And if I could ask the applicant, if you could just give us your name, please. And
My name is Layla Ahmadabadi.
Layla, welcome tonight. And if you wish to elaborate on anything in your application for this signage, please feel free.
That's pretty much it, basically. If
Pretty
you have
much.
any questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Fantastic. I now turn to the commissioners if they have any discussions prior to a motion being made relative to your application. So it's now the commissioners' time to ask any questions regarding the packet before you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Beineck?
John, the height and the measurements for the sign, are those per code for that? And are they the same as all of the other?
At shopping center, signs vary in size. This is in compliance with the square footage, the front linear square footage of the parcel.
Okay.
It's in compliance with the
Same with
linear, yeah.
the trim and everything is pretty much the same?
Yep, most of the letters in there are red letters with a metal, trying to think of the term. Returns, okay. That sort of match what's in the rest of the shopping center.
Okay. And then I know that we only have, what, one store that's there that is italicized?
I don't know all the different ones. I mean, there's one that Heather showed me that was
Yeah.
italicized.
But everything else is not, I don't recall. That would be my only concern. That's all.
Any other commissioner questions to the application?
Speaking to Commissioner Beinak, the italicized thing does kind of not match the rest of the, as far as the rest of the letters and lettering of the plaza. The other thing is, if you're changing the name to Cigar and More, do you have the website vapeandcigar.com be the same, or are you going to have cigarandmore.com?
He has various stores.
Oh, okay,
They're
so the
all
vape and
under
cigar is all
one
kind of one
umbrella.
hub of,
Yeah, exactly.
of tobaccoism things? Okay. Yeah, my only thing is the italicized thing as well.
Okay.
I'm fine with the rest of it.
Any other commissioner questions? I have a question, Leila, and that is, of course, I don't want to assume, but you also are complying with whatever the management of the shopping center
Yes, sir.
establishes for exterior signage. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay.
We have approval from them, yes.
And you've already got approval for this particular proposed sign? Gotcha, okay. Any other, John?
I would just mention, do you think the owner would be opposed to changing it to more vertical letters instead of italicized?
He has it italicized because all of the stores that he has are the same
Okay,
logo style. That's the only reason.
Okay. And 112-11, is there any prohibition on particular text or font or
No.
underlining or none of that is in the code, is there?
no, I don't think so.
Okay. And again, we've already covered this from the staff report. Nothing in the code prohibits the proposed sign. Color, size, dimensions, square footage,
Nope,
none of those criteria are in opposition to the code.
they are not.
Okay. Once again, any commissioner questions?
Sorry, I have one more
Sure.
question. Is the font the same size, or the same as the rest of the stores as well?
Again, each store has different size fonts. They varies throughout
Well,
the,
not the font itself, not the font size, but the font itself.
yeah, I think it varies in the shopping center. I don't know all of them,
Okay,
There's no one consistent style.
no.
I wish there was.
But the
If the
shopping
applicant
center
talked
has
to the
allowed
shopping
it.
center, right.
Yeah,
Interesting.
they're all different. There's not one particular set font. They all have different fonts.
Gotcha.
Do we need a copy of their approval for us to approve it?
I would say no, because
Okay,
if they put it up and the HOA or the shopping center says that's not what they approved, then
I think
they would take it down.
a properly worded motion on the condition that it has Twin Air Shopping Center management compliance, then we can, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant for the signage at Cigars and More in the Twin Arch Shopping Center? Seeing no and hearing no interest in further discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I make a motion to conditionally approve the proposed exterior signage for 1001 Twin Arch Road, Suite 11 of the Twin Arch Shopping Center, specifically the proposed sign for, quote, Cigars and More, unquote, with the condition that the proposed signage also complies with any shopping center exterior signage requirements, and to delegate to the zoning administrator the authority to issue the permit for the proposed sign. All of this is, to the public, all of this is per 112-11 in your town code. That's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion is seconded by Commissioner Hatley. Is there any further discussion on the motion or request for amendments to that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion that's been seconded signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion has passed unanimously. Thank you again for coming tonight.
Appreciate it,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Do I need to submit anything? You said there's the landlord approval, correct?
So from this point on, you work with the town planner, and you work yourself now toward the permit for that sign.
We'll deal with that tomorrow. Thank you.
It's a great question. What do I do? Fantastic. Our next item on tonight's agenda is the introduction of the proposed fire and rescue services, or EMS, certification letter. If I may, before I turn to the town planner for the background, this particular action emanates from discussions in September a planning commission meeting with regard to a parcel that is located in the Twin Arch Industrial Zone where we were examining the concept plan. And per the code that we have, at the concept plan stage, the planning commission has the duty to examine all of the 7 areas within our town for whether or not they are adequate in order for that particular concept plan to go forward. And that adequacy covers the area of fire and rescue services, a very important facility, we call it, a very important service, we call it, here within the town, of course. And so the question was raised as to whether the certification and adequacy letter that we get from the Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Department specifically addresses 4 areas contained within 25-5 of our town code. And so in an abundance of caution, we then stop the APFO certification and then we move to have a new form created. And that's what the town planner has been working on with the fire department, and that's the background for it. So we're just making the business of the town better and more documented and more reflective of exactly what's said in the code. So John, I'll turn to you if I missed anything.
Nope, that's great. Thank you, Ralph. Again, there are the 4 different areas within the fire and emergency medical services. After talking to Ralph and looking through the code, I would suggest that we make a revision to the certification, and that would be to remove the approaching inadequate from the 4 lower proposed development and location in Mount Airy checklist and percentages. Again, removing the approaching inadequate. Currently, it's adequate, and the form it currently shows approaching inadequate and inadequate. Again, I think the revision to the form would be to remove the approaching inadequate. It's either adequate or inadequate. If it's inadequate, then I feel like there should be some type of determination on how to get it adequate, be it more support services through the fire department, et cetera. But I think we can work through that later if we get into that position.
No, I think that's fair.
Yep.
We don't have a representative of the fire department here tonight to speak to the proposed letter. I don't think so, do we?
No, I did
Okay.
reach out to him last Monday for possibly being attendance in tonight's meeting, but he works another job. He said he was unable to make it.
Correct. So just to reiterate what John has said, the proposed letter is excellent. However, there are checkboxes as the questions are asked. The checkboxes include approaching inadequate, which is one of the 3 choices in the APFO certification. In looking at the code, specifically paragraph, or I should say chapter 25-6, APFO is covered in 25-5. 25-6 covers the topic of those facilities which approach inadequacy. And according to our town code, there are only 4 such facilities which are allowed to have such a certification. They are water, sewer, schools, and roads. So there's no mention of fire and rescue services enjoying approaching inadequacy as a certification. So that's just the added background to the proposed edit that John has put before us to just get rid of any approaching inadequacy language, if you follow me. And again, to reiterate what John said, the conclusion of this area's certification will be it's either adequate or it's inadequate. There's no in the middle approaching inadequate. Hope I made that clear. So with that, and there not being a representative, I now turn to the commissioners for any questions about the proposed letter.
Since the representative isn't here, how comfortable is everyone with voting on this?
Well, I think as long as we communicate to them that we think it needs to be more specific. It's either adequate or not.
Sure. Yep. And I did counsel, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. is there
Oh, no, I'm
anything?
good. Thank you.
I did take counsel from the town attorney with regard to this being considered also by some as a form for the town's administration, i.e. the APFO certification. And my question was specifically, are we within our authority, us volunteers here, to approve, essentially endorse a specific administrative letter for the business of the town? Again, in an abundance of caution, I didn't want to encroach upon the town administrator or any other town staff authority or role. I was assured that it is appropriate for us to make a motion and vote on the proposed letter with whatever edits we feel appropriate, because the commission, per the code, owns the APFO process. And of those 7 areas, if this one letter in this one area enables us to do better at that, then it's within our purview to say that's the form we want used. So hope I, allayed any fears that we're getting into the administrative form business here. But I just wanted to clear the air on that. Once again, any commissioner questions on the proposed form? The comment's been made to edit out or delete any verbiage and checkboxes related to the condition called approaching inadequacy. So at this point, I would ask for any public comment relative to that. If you could approach and identify yourself.
Good evening. Stephen Demoter, Town of Mount Airy, council member, resident. Something just kind of clicked in my head and I wanted to ask. So this was good information. What I heard was the only 4 categories where you can have approaching inadequate was water, sewer, schools, and roads. And I may be wrong on this, but I'm asking you to check. Regarding police coverage, I believe in the past I've seen some developments where the police department has given a response of approaching inadequate.
Right.
So what I'd like you to do is look at the form or whatever the process is for MAPD, and if they're using approaches inadequate, what I've just heard from the town planner is they shouldn't be doing that. It's either adequate or inadequate, correct?
Right, the argument being consistent.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So I would ask you to review the form or the approval for police coverage and make it consistent.
Now, it's a good comment, if I may, commissioners. It's a good comment, and I think from our education through this one area, I think now all future concept plans, whether they involve open space, fire, EMS, water, so I think we're all going to now be better educated and more keen to any of those final certifications. Again, the code only says 4 can bear the approaching inadequacy. So I hear what you're saying on the past.
Yeah.
And so we'll key
But
on
moving
that.
forward, you want to make them consistent. And actually, the question I was going to ask, and maybe it applies to these other 4, when you look at a development on a development by development basis, you might give a score of approaching inadequate. And what I'm thinking about is how many approaches inadequates do you need to see before you go, wait a minute, cumulatively, we've just approved 4 developments and they're all approaching inadequates. At some point,
Understood.
you see what I'm saying? It's like we're looking at things on an isolated basis. You're not sitting there and saying, well, I've got 2 other developments here and they were approaching inadequate, and now I've got another one I'm going to review. How many inadequates do I see before I say the system has too much pressure on it? So that's just another thought. Thank you.
No, I totally agree. And if I may just comment on that, again, and I'm only speaking for this commissioner, and that is, I think you proposed kind of a larger view of both 25-5 and 25-6. You've proposed a strategic view of how do we assess all 7 areas and the conclusions we reach as to whether a concept plan can move forward or not. I think that's kind of inaccurate of what I heard. And so I would ask that also be considered by the legislative body of the town, You kind of knew I was going there, because that's a code-driven, that's a text amendment to both of those important paragraphs for APFO. So I think equally important, if it's fair, we all need to look at that, particularly the town council, as to, how to make it all better. So, but I certainly understand and appreciate the question. Any other public comment regarding the proposed letter for fire and EMS certification for APFO? Seeing none, then I will entertain a motion from the commissioners, and I would caution or coach that that motion include what was proposed by the town planner as an edit.
I'll make a motion that we approve the certification of adequate facilities fire and rescue with the edit recommended by the town planner, where we take out the approaching inadequate section.
Do I hear a second to that motion from Commissioner Hadley?
I'll second.
The motion is seconded by Commissioner Beta. Any further discussion on the motion or the proposed letter? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion to approve the letter for fire and EMS certification is approved unanimously. Thank you so much. We are now on agenda item 7, which is the introduction and discussion of variance request, Wildwood Section 7. And if there are applicants or applicant, if I could ask that you come forward while I make a short preface again before I turn to the town staff.
Excuse me.
Bless you. He's got to get out of that hot tub by 2 a.m. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, are there material to add to the commissioner's information?
Okay. Take one and pass it down, I guess.
Okay. Is this different from what we had?
Okay. While we're getting settled in with the additional material, and John, again, for the second occasion this evening, I beg your pardon for me to preface
Sure, go ahead.
this topic. And it's really to get clarity, gentlemen, on this application as to what your expectations are. I'm just a simple, stupid guy, and I just want to make sure I know why this application or why this package is before us. And so if I may read from an excerpt of your application, the request says the petitioner now seeks reliable guidance on certain design issues from the Planning Commission before submitting formal plans at considerable expense to avoid a repeat of its earlier experience where design issues at the later development stage killed the previously approved special exception. So those are your words. And so again, in me trying to understand fully the purpose of tonight, I believe you are asking for either informal guidance from the commissioners prior to you presenting the step of a final subdivision plan, or are you asking a formal decision and deliberation by the commissioners on specific elements included in your package? You offer 3 specific areas for us to provide that guidance. So if I can, at the outset, is this a formal request to discuss those 3 areas, or is this an informal gathering to get guidance, if I could open it to you at this point?
John McGuire, attorney for Michael Berman. To my left is Michael Van Sant, he's the design engineer, and Mr. Berman is right behind me.
Sure.
So our intent here,
John, can you pull the microphone so it's in front of you, please? Thank you.
our intent here tonight, before filing even a concept plan, this is sort of a pre-concept meeting, is to generate some discussion from the Planning Commission about essentially the interpretation of the code and how it would apply to this project. And the short, I'll try to keep it short because you probably need to hear less from me and more from Mr. Van Sant about, some of the details of the design.
Okay.
But this goes back to a meeting we had with staff, probably close to a year ago, where we were advised that in terms of certain issues, the staff didn't feel that it had the authority to make interpretations of the code in a way that we were hoping for. Our position is we're not really asking the town for variances. We're asking for a fair look at the code and how it applies, the actual code and how it applies to this project. And we're perfectly sympathetic with the staff. John was part of that meeting that goes back a while, and he's made it very clear that he doesn't feel that the staff has the ability to make some of these difficult interpretations without direction from the Planning Commission. So I guess there's two parts to the answer to your question, Mr. Chairman. We know this is a pre-concept meeting, so in terms of thinking that tonight we're going to get an absolute, final, formal determination on something, we know that's premature, but what we're hoping to get is some direction that where we can proceed in a reliable fashion to spend what's going to be tens of thousands of dollars worth of design on a project such as this, and that the staff will have an idea as they review it and they give us direction as to what the Planning Commission is willing and not willing to consider. So maybe that's a little bit of a roundabout answer, but
No, I believe for myself, I believe that's helpful. So I think if I can get us on common ground, it's Mr. McGuire, right?
yes.
If I can get us on common ground, then we should not regard any language in this evening's deliberation as it moves forward that you are coming in with a variance request.
That's correct.
This is not a variance deliberation. Variances are covered in 112-61, and that's the purview of the Board of Appeals, correct? Right. So this would be the wrong body for us to entertain any language that talks about seeking variances. And I think we're on common ground on that.
Yes, and the reason why I was going to lead off was I wanted to speak to the code, but really this gets down to design and in good faith trying to get a project that when it comes back to you, it looks like what you're hoping for and expecting.
Understood.
But that also, I think, requires some explanation of where we're coming from in the code, and at that point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Van Sant, and he can describe how that relates to the actual plan that you're looking at.
So if I may further comment, casting tonight's presentation as a look at a pre-concept plan, this is zoned R3 medium density, if I'm accurate.
That's correct.
In our code, there is truthfully no such animal as a pre-concept plan for any development within that zoning district. The only zoning district within our code that even discusses or identifies a pre-concept plan is the MXD and the MXUCC code, of which this is not. So it's a taxonomy question because semantics are important tonight. And so I'm a bit reluctant to talk about a plan identified as a pre-concept plan when no such animal exists for R3 medium density. But having said that, you're seeking guidance on this let's call it draft design. Is that fair?
That's correct, and I guess pre-concept is my terminology, and I believe we may have labeled the drawing pre-concept just so it would not get confused with an actual formal concept plan, but there isn't any magic in that, or any code-based magic in that.
But again, I think we've reached our second element of common ground, and there is, for your zoning district and parcel, there is no such thing as a pre-concept plan. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, but I would say that it's very frustrating to try to work through some of these details with a staff that doesn't feel like it has the authority to work through them, because the answer then would be, you must spend these tens of thousands of dollars just to get to the planning commission to be told, as with the last plan, that it's not going to work. So, you know, I mean, that's part of the process, and in a small town, that is a challenge. If you're in other larger jurisdictions, the staff is given more authority. That's perfectly understandable the way it works here, but I guess it would be nice to hear what you all have to say.
Understood.
I feel like I'm making this far too formal than what we hoped, but.
Well, and I hope I'm portraying at least my comments, and I'm going to, of course, elicit comments from the commissioners here, but at least from my standpoint, I'm trying to convey to you, I'm trying to fit this package into the code. I'm trying to fit it into the process, okay? And what you're asking for is guidance on what we are now going to refer to as a draft plan. And so now the question is that part of the process? Because normally the process, and I think you would agree with me, but I'll ask, the next step in your development is to present this body and the town staff a concept plan, correct?
That will be the next step. That's what we're
That would be the next step. And so prior to that formal step identified in our code, you're here before us tonight to have a conversation, to quote, seek guidance. Is that accurate?
That is, yes.
And the impetus and the advocacy of having us in this conversation is to save the cost of plan development. Is that also accurate?
It's to save the cost, and it's also to bring back to you a plan that is closer to what your expectations are on some of these specific design issues that we'd like to talk about.
Okay, that's fair. And so my last comment before I turn to John to fill in the blanks, and then to the commissioners, and then to the public, would be to ask the question then against the code, to talk to this Bible and say, is this engagement tonight appropriate? And in all honesty, I found in paragraph 98-49 a phrase which says essentially, where the Planning Commission finds that unusual hardships may result from strict compliance with these regulations meaning the code requirements for this particular zoning district, it may vary the regulations so that substantial justice may be done and the public interest secured. And so let me boil that down after consulting the town attorney. Is there room for us to have this conversation within the code? Is it allowed within the code? And so if you cast the three elements in your package for our discussion, I believe they involve density, I believe they involve roads, and I believe they involve general discussions on the layout of the plan. Did I capture those right?
Yes.
So those are the three areas. And so you're asking us for guidance, going back to previous comments, about making that agreeable in some measure so that as you go off, you don't worry about the concept plan having the discussion at that time and having trouble with it. I'm on the same wavelength?
Yes,
Okay. So the only way, and I will turn now to John, but the only way I can see us having this conversation on a step which is not codified is to have you say, I want to formally invoke 98-49 for the Planning Commission to consider hardships relative to your plan so that we may consider variations, and we will call those not variances. We will refer to any such variation as a subdivision regulation variation. I'm trying to get away from variances, obviously. So if that's fair, that the outcome of such a deliberation under 9849 would be a subdivision regulation variation, then I'd put the question back to you again. Is this an informal, how do you feel, commissioners? Or is this a formal request for us to deliberate hardships that you're now going to state before this commission?
I'm not really sure I even understand what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, but what I guess we're asking to vary is the procedure by which we can come to you. And if we can get to the code, we're not asking for variances from the code. We're asking for interpretations of a code that is open to interpretation, more than one interpretation. But it's an interpretation that we're not able to get from the staff because the staff has told us that they're not comfortable doing that.
Okay, okay.
So
Okay, well, thank you for that. So you're asking for interpretations, vice guidance.
I think in the end, that's exactly what we're.
Okay, that's clear. That's greater clarity for me. John, let me turn to you. I've been promising that. Is there anything else that needs to be said on this package?
I don't have any additional comments to what you just explained. I mean, I was in a position where I didn't feel comfortable, hence is why I brought it in front of you. And this is the step that we sort of cast out at the beginning, where we came in for the special exception, which was brought to the Planning Commission for recommendations to the Board of Appeals. And once that was approved, then it was to come back to Planning Commission for guidance on these subdivision regulation variations.
And again, just essentially, you've provided the applicant that roadmap, that way ahead?
And that's why they're here tonight.
Understood. Okay.
In fact, just that John reminds me that when we were here the last time and the Planning Commission recommended favorably to the Board of Zoning Appeals on our special exception request, we had asked to have this discussion then, and we were told, at least I understood, we were told that you're going to have to go to the board first, which we did, and that we will then get on this agenda and then have that discussion. So that's what we thought.
That is correct, that the boundaries of the previous discussion of Wildwood Section 7 was for the special exemption for use per the code.
Right.
For R3 districts, medium density, to have, I believe the words are senior and/or elderly housing on that parcel. And so you have followed that, and we restricted the discussion in that previous deliberation to just the use recommendation to the Board of Appeals. That's a bit of history here, and so we're on common ground on that. I'm going to stop talking and turn to what some of the other commissioners may have with regard to all of the discussion you've heard and your comfort zone with what is looking for interpretation of the code tonight. Commissioner Wallace?
I am comfortable based on the code. I would like to hear from Tom.
Okay. Tom?
So, as I understand, what brings us here is that, because I've heard code interpretation, is that the applicant has requested 3 items that at least town staff is not comfortable or maybe even has determined is not consistent with the subdivision regulations, which are generally set forth in Chapter 98. Therefore, has determined that in order to approve those changes, those modifications, I'll call them, it's within the purview of the Planning Commission pursuant to Section 98-49 to approve those upon a showing of unusual hardship and that it would would be in the public interest and substantial justice would be done. That's my understanding of where we are. Now, in order to achieve those waivers or those, the variations, as we've called them, not to be confused with zoning variances, the process, the formal process set forth in the code is that you submit an application, a request, a letter, like we do with other types of waivers, setting forth the items that from the code that you seek to have changed or varied, and making a case in writing, and then later in presentation before the commission as to what is the basis for the request. What is the unusual hardship from strict compliance with these regulations? So that's my understanding of where we are. Now, the Planning Commission has the power or authority to conduct any informal inquiries or hold whatever discussions you want to have. But I think, as has been said here, that is extra code. It's beyond the code. Again, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm not saying it's not advisable to do it in certain circumstances. I'm just telling you what the process is. I've heard code interpretations. Well, my understanding is the code has been interpreted in these three respects, perhaps with disagreement, but nonetheless, at least the initial review has been to say that in these three instances, the code demands something different than what is being requested. And hence, to vary that, to get around that, to modify that, there's section 98-49. So all of that is to say, I think there's been a request due to some alleged past dealings that to have sort of an informal conference, if you will. My experience, those do occur, but they typically occur with staff, not with a full planning commission. Right. Again, not saying you should or shouldn't do it, not saying you're not empowered to do it, you are. But I'm just here to tell you that the code, at some point in time, if these are truly requests to change or vary the code requirements, right, it's got to be a request for it, and there's got to be a presentation for it, evidence of it, of what justifies it, and a vote in a very formal setting.
And so what I am hearing from you is the only way, given this package and the discussion already, the only way that this body can proceed would be under a formal request for us to exercise our authority under 9849 with a formal letter from the applicant for us to go down that road. That's the only code paragraph that gives us any authority to consider hardships or changes that result in subdivision regulation variations. Is all that accurate?
In order to grant one, that's correct. Now, again, as I said previously, it's within your purview. If you want to have an informal discussion, those do occur. Again, typically they occur with staff, but, I don't know whether they've occurred previously with a planning commission before. Perhaps they have. I don't know.
Right.
Again, so what I want to say is you have the authority to do this in the informal way that's been proposed. But at the end of the day, to gain a subdivision regulation variation, there's got to be a formal request, there's got to be a formal proceeding, and there's got to be either a grant or a denial of it.
I see. Okay. Any other commissioner questions at all, or to Tom?
Just that I understand that they're asking, in one of our packets, it lays out the three requests. So that would have to be in a formal request, correct?
Yeah, yes, and
Okay.
with some justification. What's the unusual hardship? What's the evidence of it?
Okay.
Et cetera.
Any other commissioner view on this, Commissioner?
From what I'm understanding is we're kind of asking us to weigh in on this before the formal request. I think that's kind of where we're at. You're kind of trying to say, hey, what do you guys think about these three variations, without actually formally asking it and showing us why. So I think we're kind of ahead of it.
Yeah, and am I filling in words here for you, Steve, that begs caution, or you're reluctant, or
Well, I
what's your
mean-
sentiment toward that?
And it's to me, is this kind of the precedent now? I mean, they're sending out feelers now to what we're going to weigh in on or vote on before it comes before us? Or it's kind of, you're asking us to weigh in on something without doing the actual request and giving us the background on why. So I have a problem with that.
So,
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I think we have given you the background. We've given you our arguments. I would, like the opportunity to elaborate on it. But we have kind of identified the issues, and they're relatively straightforward. And my view, as I said before, is I don't think we're going to be asking for variances. I think you have a code. Legislation is frequently built with flexibility in it, intentionally vague to deal with situations. For instance, as you've seen, in the open space waiver issue, apparently the town has a practice that's not in the code that targets 2.75 persons per unit. And according to staff, the understanding is that that's a one-size-fits-all. It doesn't matter what kind of unit you have. It's 2.75 and that's it, case closed. But we've spelled out, I think, in our memorandum that it's really not linked to reality because, for instance, elderly housing has a lesser population. And your code, because I know that's the most important thing, is the code talks about not 2.75. That's not in the code anywhere. What's in the code is you need to get to the projected population. And so the staff's understanding is we're not going to look at projected population based on what kind of unit. We're going to look at 2.75 and we're going to close the book. And that's...
So we're treading into discussing.
We are, but as an example,
I
I'm not
understand.
asking for a variance. I'm saying the code says projected population. I just would like the planning commission
Okay.
to maybe indicate either to us or to the staff, we can look at the type of housing it is to get to what is projected population in this case, rather than treating a single family unrestricted house as having the same
Understood.
population as,
Yeah, I understand the example.
and
Right.
that's not new because that is, I think I spelled that out clear enough in the memorandum.
Commissioner Wallace?
I think that the planning commission wouldn't really have to comment on that in this forum. We've commented on it in previous forums, and you could probably refer to those previous discussions for insight.
Any other commissioner comment about proceeding with discussing or interpreting the code for this forthcoming concept plan? Commissioner Butts, did you?
I have a question and an interest, and it's about an entirely different topic. I'm just curious to know why so many people out there in the audience tonight came because you knew that this topic was going to be on the agenda.
So I'll go to public comment in a moment.
All right.
And perhaps if someone speaks, they'll give us some of the rationale as to their, the obvious great interest. I won't recap just yet. I will ask, is there any other commissioner sentiment toward proceeding with interpreting or providing guidance on a draft concept plan before
Whoopsie daisy. That was a big jug.
before the proper next step, which is a concept plan? Any other?
I just have one. What's the hardship?
Oh, well, Mr. Van Stan can talk to that, but he's got to spend a huge amount of time, effort, and money to design a plan that maybe he can and maybe he can't, depending on what the answer to some of these questions are. For instance, this project has about 5 1/4 acres. And if you use the 2.75 per unit, you generate the need for 2.5 acres of open space on this small amount.
Right. You got about 2 acres looking at the map.
Well, yeah, it would be, we have about
29
1.8.
villas and single-family homes. You're putting into 5 acres. Is that kind of, that's what I'm seeing here, right?
Yeah, but
29
you're asking what's the,
homes?
yeah, well, the numbers are this. Right now, this plan that you're looking at has
Yes.
1.8 some odd acres of open space.
Well, it has that .13 next to the parcel 495
There's more than
as
one
well.
parcel.
Yeah,
of
whoever
open
those
space.
folks are, if they're here tonight to talk to it. And then you have open space of 1.558 in a corner, so it is over 2 acres. Yeah, okay.
No, it's about 1.8.
Oh, okay.
At
Open
half
space
of
is
the
1.5.
projected population, it would require, I believe, 1.3 acres roughly.
Okay.
But at 2.75, it's going to require 2.5 acres, I believe.
How many bedrooms are in the villa? How many bedrooms are in one of those?
I think there are 3s.
2 to 3?
There's,
So not a 1.357 that you're asking for? You're going to have 2 to 3 bedrooms?
Yeah,
The senior
it's
house.
restricted to elderly housing. So
Okay.
statistically, we know that that's going to generate fewer people. The other thing I cited in my memorandum was that when it comes to assessing water hookup fees for these units, the town assesses at half the rate of water usage, recognizing that these units generate just fewer people, fewer usage.
Okay.
All right. I'm done.
Any other commissioner? I now will ask if there's any interest in the public to make a comment. And again, I reserve the right to come back to commissioner and town staff and town attorney, further discussion, but I do want to get the public in here. And again, if I can kind of frame where I think the commission is now, is we're trying to decide whether this request fits into the process in the code for R3 medium-density parcel development. We have, I believe, agreed with the applicant that it does not. However, per the town attorney, 98-49 does allow us, with a formal request from the applicant, to consider variations to subdivision regulations. So, and I'm using these words carefully because variation of subdivision regulation is a far cry from asking for interpretation. So I'm even starting to wonder whether 9849 is going to be fruitful for you because of what that's designed to do. So having said all that, I now ask for hands for those interested in going to the mic. I see 2. If I could ask you to approach the mic to the left, 3. Young lady in the front, and if you could just give us your name, and if I could ask that you try to limit your comments to 2 minutes, miss.
My name is Diane Bayless. I live at 901 Promenade Lane in Mount Airy, and thank you for calling me a young lady because I live in an elderly house. And I don't consider myself elderly. I'll try to run through this real quickly, and I confess that I don't really understand all this procedure and the codes and everything, but I do have some concerns about this housing. I've lived in Mount Airy for a year, and
Okay, let's try that.
Shall I start over? Now I'm on. All right, so my name is Diane Bayless. I live at 901 Promenade Lane in Mount Airy. I will address 3 of the issues that are sort of in the discussion. One is traffic, one is the open space, and one is the design. As far as traffic, there currently are 16 houses on Promenade Lane. Adding 29 houses will more than double the load on that road. Promenade Lane is a narrow road, but it is actually wider than the other streets that will be most directly affected, Barker, Festival, Candy Apple, and Parade, which are even narrower. While street parking is already limited on some of these current streets, one of my questions is, will street parking for current residents be affected by this development? Also, many residents use canes, walkers, and wheelchairs in the street to avoid walking on uneven sidewalks, so I'm very concerned about their safety. The traffic study showed the minimum impact on Mount Airy streets as a whole, but the impact within the community is certainly going to be very great. As far as the open space, I know that this proposal does provide open space, but it takes away a lot of the current buffer for both the traffic noise and pollution coming off Route 27. The current mound and vegetation that has grown up over the past several years was not planned to be permanent, but it does provide both an aesthetic, a sound, and a pollution buffer. The USDA recommends a 65 to 100 foot buffer for noise reduction on roads with speeds greater than 40 miles an hour. What kind of buffer will this proposal result in? New houses will block some of the noise reaching the houses on Barker, but they themselves will then be subject to road noise. The USDA also recommends a vegetation buffer to help reduce pollution from traffic. Trees and shrubs create many airborne capture many airborne particles, aiding in pollution control, sequestering carbon, releasing oxygen, and helping to manage stormwater runoff. And they also attract other birds and wildlife that help to mask road noises. And will the open space help to compensate for this loss? As far as the design, the current vegetation also provides a more aesthetic vista for those houses, especially those that are in Barker. Will the new houses match the current Wildwood houses? One design that I have seen showed two-car garages, which are, most of the houses in Wildwood only have one-car garage. So the residents on Barker will now be looking over townhouses with two-car garages that will essentially be mostly garage and maybe a front door with very little space left for vegetation. We do have a concern about the age restriction. We do want to be sure that it is limited to residents of 55 and older to at least come close to matching Wildwood, which is 62 and older. While we love to have our children and our grandchildren visit, we do not want the added traffic of school buses, teen drivers, at the added traffic that families provide. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I went to 3 minutes because you showed a great deal of research, and so I didn't want to cut you off. And so I will afford all later speakers 3 minutes also. Is there another speaker on this topic in the back? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
In which case,
and in the front, you'll go next if you like. Okay.
I'm Jennifer Abamonte. My in-laws are in the process of purchasing a home here. So this is a long-term investment for us, and we'll be spending time in the community getting to know all of you. My concern is specifically relevant to the third request, which I think is a stop for most of us, if I had to guess. The open space requirement shouldn't be negotiable based on information that is citing Montgomery County information, first of all, averaging 1.2 people in Montgomery County, and even with the little bit more that they have afforded us, I don't think most of your households are 1.2 people, or 1.37, and certainly not, that's not what they're going to be coming soon. So I also have an issue with them citing page 2, first page, where they talk about assuming a 15% vacancy rate in the others category, which includes senior housing. I know that we had to wait for a house in this community to become available and make a blind offer. We don't even know what the house looks like yet, because that's how much demand there is for this community. So to devalue it by putting in multiple units that are not going to be aesthetically the same, they're not going to have the same green space, and saying that a senior community uses less water is not the same as saying they need less open space. So the two are not equal, and using one to justify the other, I would encourage, if this is proposed as a variance, I would encourage the council to reject. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. In the front here, please, your name.
Hi, Linda Bradley, and I am at 1008 Parade Lane, which is just around the corner from Barker. My primary concern with this is the housing units that are on Barker, the new housing units, and whether they will be consistent with the design of the houses that are already in the rest of the community. It does not look like it from the plans that we have seen and you've distributed. They look very much like townhouses, not the type, instead of having four very small houses, the houses on the other side and in the rest of the community would be more like two of those houses put together. Now, they have some units in the other places that are similar, but not those two 4-unit blocks. And I don't feel like it's going to be at all consistent with the rest of the community. And I just feel like that's going to be a detraction from the value of the community. So, thank you.
Mr. Demoter, did I see your interest?
Yes, I wanted to make sure that there were no more citizen comments.
Oh, okay. If, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, John. And again, 3 minutes if I can, and your name first.
Roger Dahlman. I live on 1001 Promenade Lane. And I've been tracking some of these developers for some time, and the proposed one does not offer any improvements over any that we've seen in the past. But to comment specifically, if I understand the discussion tonight, some of these requests come from, or evolve from the requirements for open space. Well, there's a solution to that, simple solution. Just reduce the number of houses and you get more open space. So that is something that the commission ought to consider in whatever deliberations they carry out. There is one issue that hasn't come up tonight. It's in the category of roads. We noticed that the pre-concept plan, if that's a picture that if that's what you call the picture we saw, does not have any access to Ridge Avenue. Well, an access to Ridge Avenue would relieve a lot of the traffic on Promenade and Barker and be much more acceptable to the community. So the planners should seriously consider an access to Ridge Avenue. And I was looking at some of the drawings, and it doesn't take a lot of creativity to identify how a road could be configured into this design to access Ridge Avenue and relieve a lot of the traffic on Promenade and Barker and some of the other streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. There was a gentleman behind him, I believe. Again, your name first, please.
My name is Steve Semmelsberger. I live here in town on Troon Circle. I'll try and keep this brief because I wasn't sure at the beginning whether this was actually a variance request or whether this was just, after sitting in the back, it appears that there has been a plan that they have designed, but in order for that plan to work, they have to have these 3 things changed. The hardship, I think, is that in order to come up with the plan for the town, they have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on an official plan. So I think that's the hardship they may be looking at. That's not a hardship that meets the variance requirement for the town, as far as I know. If they don't want to come up with a plan that needs the variances, write the plan to what the town code says. Currently, we're using 2.75. Use the 2.75. They use an example from Rockville and Montgomery County, which every meeting I've ever come to says, we don't want to be Montgomery County. We don't want to be Rockville. They use 1.2, but if you look at that a little closer, the 1.2 includes nursing homes, assisted living, as well as senior housing. Well, most nursing homes and most assisted livings are one room with one occupant. So that's going to drop that number down to 1.2. If you also look at that, what they used, that same report says single-family units use 2.99 persons per unit. A single-family attached, which they say is a townhouse, is 2.597, and an apartment or condo is 2.095. Where does a villa fit into that category? To me, it would be closer to the townhome, which is 2.59, which is real close to what the town is using as 2.75. And that goes back to the open space. So I really think the town is right with their 2.75, and I think that's what should be used. I think Mr. Demoter will probably hit a lot of the road stuff, but I will just mention, I don't think, from what I read in the town code, that cul-de-sacs are allowed without your permission. I don't know if this has been brought before you all, but if it hasn't, they can't even have this plan with a cul-de-sac. Plus, a cul-de-sac can only be 500 feet if you do approve it. From my rough estimates, it's at least 550 feet from where the road starts to where the last unit ends. It wouldn't meet the criteria according to what the town code currently says. So I don't have any issue per se with the way they have the homes laid out. The topography is going to be difficult, to say the least, to try and get those homes built where they are showing them built on the current plan. But again, I don't see the hardship that they're requesting, with the exception of the cost of building a new plan that meets the current code that Mount Airy has.
Thank you. Mr. Demoter, I believe you're up next.
All right, thank you, Stephen Demoter, council member, town resident, and senior citizen. And I'm here, I'm thinking as a senior citizen, and I'm here to represent my senior citizen constituents in Wildwood. Just a couple things. Whatever everybody does moving forward, please take this pre-concept notation off of all the documentation, because that suggests this is a mixed-use community, and it's not. Okay, so let's start there. Number two, when this does come to you at the right step of the process, I would just encourage you as the Planning Commission. You know, we have a code. We have requirements. Can we just follow the requirements? We have an 80-acre deficit of open space in this town because over the last umpteen years, we've done this kind of thing. We've kind of said, well, you know, we can do this, we can do that. And here we are with an 80-acre deficit of open space. All right? Number three, I'm not going to mention the communities, but this town just went through a council vote on a development that included a major portion of it being senior housing. And per the staff report recommendation to the council, and per the council comments, we didn't allow them to use 1.375 or anything less than the 2.75 number that we've always used. So if you suddenly switch to change this, you're setting a precedent against other decisions you've already made, okay? Roadways, just a comment, in the downtown vision plan, they spoke to complete streets. This was a town-funded study, and in it, they recommended require new development near Maryland Route 27 and in other areas to design new streets to meet the complete streets principles and enhance and expand pedestrian and bicycle networks. So you ought to be thinking about enhancing the roadway that's going to go in there, not making it smaller, okay? That's really my main comment is, well, let me say this. I've been on the council for 3.5 years. My observation is developers always come to us and ask for things from us. I don't see a whole lot of times where developers come to us and offer to give things to us, okay? So can we just follow the code? If they have to meet 2.75, then that's the requirement. If we have an open space deficit, they have to formally file a waiver, follow the process, apply the open space guidelines, and that's how the determination is made. Can we just please follow the process and give the benefit of the doubt to the citizens? Thank you.
One last call for any public comment relative to this topic. Seeing none, I close the pump. Oh, I am sorry. I gotta clean my glasses.
Lois Romeo, I'm just purchased 701 Barker Boulevard, right across from the woods there. I just really have a question, which is I was trying to picture these units of the 4. What are they? Are they multi-level? Are they one level? I mean, we just couldn't, I mean, you just can't tell too much from what we're seeing here. And so that was my biggest question, since I'll be looking at whatever they are.
Understood. Yeah, so this is for public comment, and
Yes.
we try to avoid the interaction with the developer.
Okay.
I understand your question, but again, we're just looking for statements of your perspective relative to the topic. So thank you so much.
My perspective is I would like to see it look the way the community looks today, because that's why many of us purchased.
That's clear, yeah. Thank you again so much. We have one more, Ms. Mansfield?
Yep, that's right, Monica Mansfield. So, short story short, our youngest, we have 9, our youngest just went to college. He's got epilepsy, has tonic-clonics, grand mals. His roommate brought a 3D printer and ran it through the night. So Miles had a seizure at 4 a.m., and then he had another one at 4 p.m. And that's pretty rough to have 2 grand mals in 12 hours. But it caused the school, because they'd never come up with a policy about 3D printers, because no kid had ever brought a 3D printer to school. So they suddenly said, hey, we need a policy. Your policies are in place because somewhere, somehow along the line, something happened that mitigated the need for them. And so I'm asking you, just like everybody else here, to stay with them. They were created for a reason. They're good policies, the 2.75, and all the other codes that apply to this. The fact that some people want not to read the book or do the work and just get the crib notes and not make a formal application is rather telling. And so I agree with the assessment of the hardship. It's a normal part of a development. It's just part of the cost of a development is formally applying and going through the same ropes that every other developer had to go through. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And one more time with my eyes wide open. Any other, any other public interest on this topic? If not, then I close the public comment on this agenda item, and I turn to the town attorney. Again, I'm going to pulse the commissioners before I turn to the town attorney.
I just want to
Go
ask
ahead.
a quick question. Does this count as guidance?
Does what?
Does this input from the,
I guess. I mean, it's not what they're asking for, but.
right, but the citizens are speaking, so that should
So,
help.
so in the interest of everyone's time, because I hope I've given at least the signal that I want to give this a fair shake on what's before us tonight. I go back to those words that I carefully chose. I want to clearly understand what you expect from the package you put before us tonight, and we've reached elements of common agreement. We've concluded several things. We've heard from the public relative to the code being applied appropriately in this requested deliberation. And so with all that, I'm going to ask a question of the town attorney, and that is to move forward would or would not require a motion and vote, or would a simple roll call of commissioner preference on what to do next, if I state what to do next clearly and then ask for a roll call, Tom?
Yeah, I think you can do that. I don't think anybody's here. There's nothing formal here.
Correct.
I don't think anybody's asking for a motion.
Right.
It seems to me that the first issue that you have to tackle is are you going to provide the informal guidance and
Right.
the
Right.
informal, albeit public, setting that we're in now.
Got you. And if the conclusion of the roll call is that we will not go beyond the discussion, then this item is denied, or postponed, or
No, well.
closed? It's
Yeah,
closed.
since all that's been requested at this point in time is your informal
Right.
advices.
Right.
What
Okay.
would have to happen next would be
Okay.
more formal, code-driven
Right.
process.
Is there any commissioner or town staff who doesn't have a full understanding of where we are right now in all of the time we spent on this? Okay, all right. Then I am going to propose 3 points, and I'm going to ask for a roll call. I will go down the line from Commissioner O'Malley to my left, and I will end the roll call. And my 3 points are this. Informal guidance for any developer relative to interpreting or understanding our code is sought by the developer to the town planner. All informal requests for guidance or interpretation is sought from the town planner.
May I speak?
Let me finish, please, Mr. McGuire. The second point is the next step per the code for this planning commission to deliberate and decide on your development's plan is at the concept plan stage. Not something called a pre-concept plan, not something referred to as a draft plan, which I did, but it's at the concept plan stage. Third point, or in lieu of considering a formal submission of your concept plan, this body, under its authority given in 98-49, through a formal letter that the developer provides to the town showing what hardships exist in providing a concept plan, can then invoke 9849 for this commission to have a deliberation on your identified hardships, to seek guidance, to seek interpretation, and to possibly seek variation of the code. Those are the 3 points. Really, again, you get your informal guidance from that staff member. We expect you to next deliver a concept plan. If you don't feel like you can do a concept plan, then you can look at 9849 to formally request that deliberation. So I'm asking to go down the line as to the agreement from the commissioners of those 3 points. Commissioner O'Malley?
Yeah.
Commissioner Beta?
Yes.
Commissioner Hadley?
Yes?
Commissioner Butts?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Beineck?
Yes.
Commissioner Wallace? Oh, I am so sorry. She's our alternate. That's the second mistake I made this year. And for myself, I agree with the 3 points. And so at this point, I am, Mr. McGuire and Mr. Van Zandt, I am going to close this agenda item from any further discussion. That guidance has been provided to you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
The item is, Mr. McGuire, the item is closed. Robert's Rules of Order, we have closed this agenda item. If you have questions, I would ask you entertain them with the town planner.
Well, the town planner told us he could not make that interpretation. That's why we came here. I just want to make that point. I understand the matter's closed.
Okay.
But hopefully you'll understand our dilemma.
Understood.
But we will go back to the town planner and
Please do. Please do.
put that out.
And again, I thank the public for your interaction tonight on this topic. We're now going to move to reports and other business and future items, beginning with Councilman Evans' liaison report. You have the floor.
Thank you. Excuse me. For the October 7th Town Council recap, we started with a public hearing for the annexation resolution 2024-46 of the Pank property. Nobody showed up for public comment on that matter. The vote will be held on November 4th, next Monday, at our Town Council meeting. For new business, the road closure for Veterans Day celebration on Monday, November 11th, was unanimously approved.
Mr. Evans, can you speak into the microphone a little more? Everyone's leaving now, so I can't hear.
Road closure for Veterans Day celebration on Monday, November 11th was unanimously approved. There will be a firing squad and the A10 flyover down Main Street, which is... What do we call it? Not the firing squad.
21 gun
Change
salute.
the wording of it. Like, that was in the document. So. And the A10 flyover. It'd be really cool coming down Main Street. The treatment
We'll be
plant
an
upgrades
honor
were
guard.
approved using ARPA funds.
The water treatment plant upgrades were approved.
Correct.
Okay.
For reappointments, David DeFonso reappointed to the Water and Sewer Commission. Bruce Waltz, Mark Moxley, Dick Swanson, and Anne Marie Duckett were all reappointed to the Board of Elections. For ordinances, budget amendment ordinance 2024 was introduced for the purpose of amending the budget by reducing the water and sewer capital budget by $215,000 for the water and wastewater treatment plant laboratory upgrade project. Ordinance 2024-23 was introduced. Budget amendment for the purpose of amending the budget by adding $85,000 to the water and sewer capital budget to proceed forward with the water main replacement on Rockwell Avenue and Bellevue Avenue, with funding coming from the ARPA. Next council meeting will be November 4th, next Monday at 7:30 here in Town Hall.
Any questions from the commissioners for Councilmember Evans? Thank you so much. And now we turn to the Town Zoning Administrator report. John, do you have any highlights, or the report is before each of the commissioners? If you have any questions?
No highlights.
No highlights, it's before you. Any questions on his report? Hearing no interest in commenting on it, then I will state the next Planning Commission meeting is November 25th at 7:30 here in Town Hall. That's the Monday before Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so that'll be a busy week for everybody. One last call for commissioners for any comments before I adjourn. No interest?
I have one.
Town staff, yeah.
Possibly the next joint workshop for the master plan might be in the middle of November, possibly the 12th or the 14th. There's been no dates thrown out yet. I just want everybody to sort of put it on their calendar because of the holidays and other events. It seems like it's the earliest opportunity, and that will be in Town Hall.
Is that a request that you're making of town council?
I have not spoken with the president of the town council yet, but I'm just looking logistically, that looks like the week that'll work.
I'm good for the 12th and the 14th.
Gotcha.
As long as there's no more surprise dates that come up, you know.
Yeah, so everybody take a look at your
From the
calendars.
council.
And I would encourage you, if I may, John, to elaborate, if you have a definite hard problem with either the 12th or the 14th, just send that signal to John so he can kind of get a tally into the council's consideration of those two dates that we'll have good attendance or we won't from the commission. So is that fair?
Yeah, and that might get discussed possibly on the 4th. Monday, the 4th, at the town council.
At the council meeting. Gotcha. Very good. Okay, is that it, John?
That's it for me.
Great. This meeting is now adjourned. It is 9:03. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.